Gojo Satoru is the strongest character in the Jujutsu Kaisen universe, with even Sukuna, the king of curses, barely managing to keep up with him. But what if Gojo was born in a universe filled with planetary-level threats just like him? In today's video, we'll explore what would happen if Gojo Satoru was born in Naruto's world. Now, there's an obvious issue here. Since cursed energy doesn't exist in the Naruto universe, what happens to all of Gojo's abilities? So first, let's establish exactly what makes Gojo so ridiculously overpowered in his own universe, and how these abilities translate to the Naruto world. Born with the legendary 6 eyes, Gojo will possess a perfect perception of chakra, perhaps even exceeding the Byakugan or Sharingan. Since birth, Gojo sees chakra flow in microscopic detail, and can predict his opponent's movements while also maintaining his techniques with near-zero chakra consumption. But here's where things get broken. Gojo is born with Infinity, the ability to create a passive defense that creates an invisible barrier using space manipulation. Technically speaking, anything approaching him, be it a kunai, shuriken, or even a Rasengan or tailed beast bomb, would slow down infinitely and never actually reach him. In Naruto terms, this would be classified as a space-time ninjutsu that runs automatically. It's like having the Kamui's intangibility, except you don't need to activate it, and it works against everything physical. Gojo would go on to develop ninjutsu and genjutsu variations of his cursed techniques later on, but let's take a look at his early life before that. Let's say Gojo is born into a prestigious Hidden Leaf clan, maybe a branch family of the Hyuga, or a new clan entirely. From birth, the 6 eyes ability passed through the Satoru bloodline marks him as special. While Naruto is pranking villagers and Sasuke is brooding, young Gojo stands out as probably the most arrogant kid in class when he's an academy student. Gojo is even more of a prodigy than the likes of Neji and Sasuke, and he masters the clone jutsu instantly, because he can just see how his chakra needs to flow. But this doesn't mean he's lazy, because Gojo still works hard with his taijutsu instructors, and develops a strong martial arts foundation without relying on his ninjutsu. He'd graduate top of his class effortlessly as a genius tier student, especially because Infinity is a completely unknown technique in the shinobi world. Gojo would likely be placed on a team with other talented genin, possibly even Team 7 if we want maximum chaos. But Kakashi would have his hands full with 2 genius rivals in Sasuke and Gojo, so it's more likely that he ends up on a different team that goes on parallel missions. During his genin training, Gojo begins developing his unique styles of ninjutsu similar to the cursed techniques he has in the Jujutsu Kaisen universe. Blue creates a powerful attractive force using chakra manipulation, essentially a vacuum implosion that works like the universal pull technique in Naruto. Gojo can use this to crush opponents, or to pull them toward a single point. But then he realizes that the technique can be reversed to create another powerful jutsu. Red is the opposite of blue, and generates an enormous repulsive force that can blast away anything in its path, just like the almighty push technique used by Pain. When blue and red collide, they create purple, an imaginary mass that erases anything it touches from existence. Gojo doesn't develop this technique until much later on in our timeline, but this is a deadly technique that can bypass any blocking, defense, or regeneration. In the Naruto world, only techniques like Kamui or other space-time jutsu might have any chance of countering it. And let's not forget, Gojo can heal himself using reverse curse techniques, which would probably manifest in the form of medical ninjutsu. Even at a young age, Gojo would be a pretty broken character, similar to Gaara in the early arcs, and we see this unfold as he enters the Chunin exam arcs. The tournament is where Gojo truly shines. He faces off against Neji, who activates Byakugan and immediately rushes to attack Gojo. But Neji's in for a shock, as Gojo's chakra flows perfectly through his 6 eyes, with 0 waste. Neji is actually in a really unfavorable matchup here, because as a taijutsu specialist, he can barely land a hit on Gojo due to Infinity. Eventually, Neji gets overwhelmed by repeated bursts of blue and red, and Gojo's immense chakra reserves let him wear down his opponent in a battle of attrition. Gojo would likely have won the tournament, or at least made it to the finals alongside Sasuke, setting up a legendary rivalry, if not for the Konoha Crush interrupting the Chunin exams. When Orochimaru launches his attack on Konoha, Gojo could either become a key defender or join Naruto and Sasuke as they chase Gaara. Given that he's still an inexperienced ninja, it's highly unlikely that Gojo makes a huge difference in this arc, but the pressure on the situation may lead him to finally unlock his purple technique. When Sasuke leaves the village, Gojo's response would be interesting. He's powerful, but he's also arrogant. Gojo is likely to be sympathetic towards Sasuke, as he also believes in becoming the strongest, even at the cost of working with someone like Orochimaru. But if Gojo does join the retrieval mission, the Sound 4 don't really stand a chance, as Gojo has none of the weaknesses that the original members of Sasuke's recovery mission had. Infinity blocks all their attacks, and blue-red combination techniques would demolish them, with even Kimimaro probably not posing much of a threat. But ultimately, the job of stopping Sasuke falls to Naruto, and it's pretty unlikely that Gojo's involvement even makes a difference here in terms of shaking Sasuke's resolve. During the 2.5-year gap between part 1 of Naruto and the start of Shippuden, Gojo would be refining his techniques, while Naruto trains with Jiraiya and Sasuke trains with Orochimaru. While Gojo would perfect the techniques we've discussed so far, the real improvement is his development of the domain expansion, Infinite Void. When activated, this technique acts like a genjutsu that traps opponents in a realm of infinite information, overwhelming their minds with unlimited knowledge all at once. Most opponents are instantly paralyzed, unable to move or think, but the sheer sensory overload of Jujutsu sorcery probably won't be replicated here. When the Akatsuki start hunting tailed beasts, Gojo becomes a major problem for their plans. Gojo likely encounters Kakuzu and Hidan during the Akatsuki suppression mission, where he joins the team led by Asuma. The first encounter with these two goes far differently in this case, because the Akatsuki struggle to actually hit Gojo, giving Asuma and Shikamaru more freedom to strategize. Gojo's hollow purple would come as a surprise for Kakuzu and Hidan, and would actually force them to retreat, as it's not a conventional jutsu they have an answer for. This would also probably delay the Akatsuki capturing and stealing the three-tailed beast, but it's unlikely that Gojo's presence in this timeline would prevent the Akatsuki's progress entirely. But now we get to the big one, Pain's assault on Konoha, where the village is destroyed and many die. With Gojo present, this battle becomes a bit more hopeful, and while Naruto is at Mount Myoboku, Gojo is the village's strongest defender besides Kakashi and Tsunade. Gojo's curse techniques are actually a great counter to the Deva path, and it's likely that he'd be able to keep it under control. As for the other paths, Gojo might not be able to stop them all, but he does occupy them successfully, as he can block their attacks using Infinity. Ultimately, it falls to Naruto to actually take out the 6 paths and ultimately face Nagato, but Gojo prevents most of the damage to the village and many of the deaths. However, this doesn't really make much of a difference, as Nagato revives practically everyone he killed at the end of the arc anyway. It's at this point in the story that Gojo begins to slowly get outclassed by the rest of the main cast. Sure, his abilities are interesting, but does he have the power to match Naruto in 6-path stage mode, fueled by Kurama's immense chakra reserves? And what about villains like Madara and Obito? Infinity might provide a defense against them, making Gojo a little less helpless than regular ninjas, but his ninjutsu and genjutsu won't be powerful enough to overpower the major villains. But things get a bit more difficult when we look at Obito, as the Ten Tails host has truth-seeking balls that can nullify ninjutsu. If you really think about it, the truth-seeking balls might be able to nullify even Infinity, because they erase techniques at a fundamental level. If this is true, Gojo is in danger for the first time. He'd have to fight more strategically, dodging rather than relying on his passive defense. But the critical moment is when Madara casts Infinite Tsukuyomi, the genjutsu that traps the entire world. Gojo's 6 eyes might allow him to detect the chakra manipulation, but he doesn't have a tailed beast or a Rinnegan to shield him from a genjutsu of this magnitude, and his Infinity is only useful against physical attacks. As a result, Gojo stops making a difference in the latter half of the 4th Shinobi World War, as both the key antagonists and protagonists have surpassed his power. However, thanks to him being on virtually Akatsuki level, Gojo does avoid dying during the war, which is a much better fate than most of the shinobi experienced. But more than just power scaling, the most interesting aspect of this timeline is how Gojo's personality affects the story. His arrogant and playful nature might clash with Naruto's idealism, challenge Sasuke's pride, and frustrate Kakashi with his attitude. But Gojo would also push everyone to be better, creating a new dynamic in the team relationships. In the end, Gojo doesn't replace Naruto as the hero, and instead backs up Naruto's determination with his raw power and intelligence. So what do you think? Could Gojo really change the Naruto timeline this drastically? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below.